July 9, 1918. Two fully loaded passenger trains enter the same single-track line outside Nashville and collide head-on at Dutchman's Curve. 101 people die in seconds, the deadliest train wreck in American history. The official story calls it a tragic mistake, but under the railroad's own rules, this was never supposed to happen. So what really broke down, and why couldn't the system stop it? Every movement on the Nashville division in 1918 began with the printed timetable, a document that spelled out which train held the right-of-way, when and where. This schedule was not just a list of arrivals and departures, it was the backbone of authority. If a train appeared on the timetable, it had the legal right to the track unless a dispatcher issued a written override. That override came as a train order handwritten on standardized paper, Form J for holding orders, Form K for clearance. Each form required the dispatcher's signature and a signed receipt from the crew. No train could lawfully enter a single-track section without these papers in hand. The process was designed for redundancy. Orders were transmitted by telegraph or telephone to the nearest staffed station, copied by the operator and placed on the train order hook for the crew to collect as they passed. The engineer or conductor would read the order aloud, repeat it for confirmation, and sign the receipt line. Only then could the dispatcher log the order as received in the company's register. Any ambiguity or any missing signature meant the train was to be held until the paperwork was correct. This chain of written authority, signatures, and oral repeats formed the official barrier against disaster. The rules left little room for improvisation. A train's right to move came from the timetable unless a written order, properly delivered and acknowledged, said otherwise. The system depended on paperwork, human memory, and a strict hierarchy enforced by ink and voice. Under these procedures, two trains should never have entered the same single-track block at the same time, yet at Dutchman's Curve, that barrier failed. If you are interested in the hidden mechanics that keep, or fail to keep, complex systems safe, consider subscribing. We are investigating the overlooked risks and unseen breakdowns that shape the world around us. Railroad safety in 1918 rested on the assumption that human layers, dispatchers, operators, and train crews could compensate for any single lapse. But the system's strength was also its weakness. On paper, every movement required not just one, but two independent confirmations, the dispatcher's written order and a second acknowledgement from the station master at the next controlled point. The Interstate Commerce Commission's rulebook demanded this redundancy, aiming to make a single-point failure impossible. Yet the reality inside the Nashville division was far less robust. Wartime traffic surged to record levels. Dispatcher logs from the summer of 1918 show a typical shift covering up to 150 miles of single track with as many as 16 trains per dispatcher per 8-hour shift, a workload that had risen nearly 30% in just 2 years. On peak days, dispatchers sometimes worked 12 or even 14 hours without relief. Operators juggled a constant stream of telegraph and telephone messages, copying orders by hand and rushing to meet trains at the order hook. The backup channels, the secondary phone line, and the messenger service were only as reliable as the people running them, and fatigue crept in as the shifts dragged on. Despite the Commission's mandate for duplicate verification, staff shortages and relentless schedules often left the system running with one dispatcher and a single operator covering a territory meant for 2 or 3. Every order still needed a signature, every receipt a timestamp, but the margin for error shrank as the pace increased. The pressure to keep trains moving, especially with troop and supply runs prioritized during World War I, meant that redundancy was sometimes treated as a formality, not a hard barrier. An archivist who spent years combing through the Nashville Division's records once summed up the hidden risk. The rules looked airtight, but the line between routine and disaster was only as thick as the next tired hand on the telegraph key. At 6:42 in the morning on July 9, 1918, the Nashville dispatcher issued a clearance order authorizing train number 4 to enter the single-track stretch west of the city. The order, sent by telegraph to the West Nashville Tower, assumed train number 1 would already have cleared the section by 7:10 in the morning. The dispatcher's log records the transmission, and the operator copied the order for the crew. 7 minutes later, train number 4, under engineer David Kennedy, departed the Nashville yards, running behind schedule but with the paperwork in hand. Trouble began less than 15 minutes after the initial clearance. At 6:55 in the morning, the dispatcher, realizing that train number 1 had not yet reached the passing siding, attempted to amend the previous order. A second telegram was sent to the West Nashville Tower, canceling the clearance and instructing the operator to hold train number 4, but the amendment never reached the crew. The telegraph office files from that morning note a line fault at precisely 6:55 in the morning, interrupting communication between the dispatcher and the tower. The operator, unable to confirm receipt, had no way to physically stop the train once it was underway. With the failed amendment lost in transit, both trains now occupied the same stretch of single track, each operating under the assumption that the line was clear. The dispatcher's log shows a final urgent attempt to halt the trains at 7:07 in the morning, but the gap, those 15 minutes of uncertainty, had already set disaster in motion. The breakdown was not a single missed signal, but a sequence of missed connections, each one eroding the system's intended safeguards. At Dutchman's curve, the laws of physics left no room for escape. Both trains, each weighing hundreds of tons, approached the blind curve at nearly 55 miles per hour. The track's sharp radius, about 850 feet, meant that even on a clear morning, the crew's line of sight was limited to less than 600 feet, sometimes as little as 400 where the cornfield pressed close to the embankment. According to the equipment manuals of the era, a fully loaded passenger train traveling at that speed needed over 1,800 feet to come to a complete stop on level ground. On Dutchman's curve, the slight downgrade stretched that minimum to more than 2,000 feet. Engineer David Kennedy later described the moment he first glimpsed the opposing headlight. It was just a flash, no time for anything but the brake. The Westinghouse air brakes, state-of-the-art for 1918, could only do so much. Even with an immediate emergency application, the train would still be moving close to 30 miles per hour by the time it reached the point of collision. Crew logs and ICC accident reports confirm that both engineers applied full brakes, but the available track simply ran out too soon. The curve's geometry, the speed, and the weight of the trains made the outcome certain long before either crew could react. The impact at 7:20 in the morning unleashed forces far beyond what the wooden passenger cars could withstand. Within seconds, telescoping coaches splintered and caught fire. Survivors later recalled the suddenness, the sense that the collision was over almost before they could register what had happened. The disaster was not just a product of missed orders or human error, but of a physical system that, once set in motion, offered no second chance. At Dutchman's curve, the difference between a near miss and catastrophe was measured in feet the crews never had. Fatigue shaped every decision in the hours before Dutchman's curve. Crew rosters from the Nashville division show engineers and conductors regularly exceeded 12-hour shifts, a practice made routine by wartime shortages and relentless demand. In the week leading up to July 9th, duty hour logs recorded by the railroad reveal multiple instances of crews working well past regulatory limits. Interstate Commerce Commission studies from that era found reaction times dropped by nearly 20% after 8 hours on duty and fell further beyond 12 hours. Survivors later described a sense of confusion in the aftermath. One porter, Hall, remembered trying to reach the front of the train just before the impact, only to wake up amid wreckage and fire. Local newspapers reported that many of the dead were African American passengers, most riding in the rear Jim Crow coach. Within minutes, neighbors and first responders rushed to the scene, pulling survivors from burning cars. while doctors and clergy set up makeshift aid stations along the embankment. The cost was measured in lives and communities. The toll was 101 dead and more than 170 injured, a count tallied by the coroner's office in a matter of hours. The deeper cost was the families and communities left shattered by a system that pushed its people to the breaking point. After Dutchman's curve, railroad regulators faced a hard truth. Written rules and human signatures alone could not guarantee safety. The Interstate Commerce Commission responded by urging railroads to adopt block signaling, an electrical system that detects train presence and locks out conflicting movements automatically. By the 1920s, block signals began appearing on high-traffic main lines, physically preventing two trains from entering the same single-track section at once. Decades later, the push for technological enforcement continued with positive train control, a digital network that can override human error and stop a train before disaster strikes. As one safety engineer put it, every rule has a breaking point. Only a system that enforces its own limits can keep the worst from happening again. The lessons of Dutchman's curve still echo in every debate about automation, reminding us that true safety demands more than trust in procedure. It requires fail-safes that don't blink, tire, or forget. Rules alone couldn't stop 101 lives from vanishing at Dutchman's curve. Today, hidden risks still hide in the spaces between human judgment and technology. The real danger isn't just error, it's trusting fragile systems without accountability. Subscribe to join the investigation into unseen failures shaping the world we live in.